Well, gang, we've got Bryan Case with us today. Bryan, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share a little bit about your journey and your story in real estate, my friend.
Hey, Luke, thanks for having me on.
For those that don't know Bryan has been in the kingdom for a hot minute, and I feel like I have like a little bit of a connection because we were talking a little bit beforehand, and he jogged my memory about some of his military service. And he started in Great Falls, Montana, and that's where I'm from, Billings. So there's the kindred spirits there on the Montana side. I'm like, yes, service first and foremost. Sure appreciate you, seriously.
I appreciate the support. Love the opportunity to come on and chat for a minute. Here to chat about anything you got.
I appreciate it, man. The reason that I do these is one, as I've mentioned, like I want to showcase you because you've been in the community for a while. You've done some great stuff. I just want to highlight you because I think that it is worth highlighting our members so that you are validated in what you're doing, as well as other people can see what their fellow kingdomites or kingdompreneurs, if you will, are doing. What I find when I do these is people message me and they go, wow, it inspired me to take the next step in my journey. And then they overcame a fear or moved into the new strategy or whatever it is. And when people watch these, they get inspired to go take more action.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, my first question for you is, where did your real estate journey start and like what prompted it?
That's an excellent question. It's a difficult one at first to kind of pinpoint because mine is in my head, I've kind of started in a couple different ways. I'll tell you, it originated back when my wife and we were back in Great Falls, Montana. She got a job as a realtor, interest in real estate, but never really dove into it. And so her broker connected us with a couple other people and stuff like that. Up starting our first investments, which I think we'll chat about here in a second. But we started investing in Great Falls, Montana, technically. I wasn't really full on in my head like investor mode. It was just, hey, we want to do this. We want to do something else, what we'd been doing. It wasn't like, hey, I need to create another income stream, long-term wealth and passive income and stuff like that.
Kind of like a convenient hobby since your wife was a realtor, it sounds like.
Exactly. It was definitely a little bit more convenience, luck, right place, right time, market and everything. You know, that was the original start. And then out about it a little bit later. But it pivoted for me mentally first, later, a few years or so later when I was in England. We'll probably get to. That's a little bit of the background on me for that.
That's awesome. That's good. And I always like to start with that because it's always interesting to see where people start and why. And it's going to be people that hear that and they go, oh, wow, I resonate with that because they may have a similar experience. In the military, maybe they're not, but that is actually a common one. I mean, you hear definitely the side of, oh, I did it for the cash flow or I did it for this, but it's very common. We hear people that are like, it kind of just happened. Like it just made sense at the time because of my wife was a realtor or whatever. So you mentioned doing your first deal and it sounds like the first couple of deals in Great Falls. Can you talk a little bit about what that first deal or maybe that first couple of deals look like for you?
Yeah, let's chat about those. So we did 2 deals in Great Falls. Well, 2 deals outside of our primary house. And so the way it worked, and it ties in with my job with the military. So I was for about 6 years and my wife was a realtor and we decided, let's take a leap. We ended up putting in an offer on a property that was a foreclosure, a bank REO owned. And that was 2007 or the beginning of 2008, which mind you is right around where technically majority of the country. Yeah. So we ended up buying this single family house because at the time we were moving out of her mom and dad's place. And so we wanted a place. We got in there and it didn't really need much. So that was pretty easy. And then we were talking with my wife's broker and he was like, well, you know, you could do up to a 4-unit on a VA loan since you're military. So he kind of connected us in and we found a fourplex buying not too long after that. Maybe it was probably within a year of the first purchase. And so the first one, I think we went conventional. I don't remember if it was 5% down at the time because we lived in it. A little bit down. We bought it off the MLS and then getting this fourplex under contract VA loan with the goal of moving into one of the units and renting the other 3 out. You've probably heard the term house hacking. That was kind of the plan, was house hack and go from there. And so we will chat a little bit about the numbers. I want to say that first house we bought was like $142,000, I think, and it rented, we'll say about $1,250. We kept it for about 5 years before we sold it. And we ended up selling it for about $200, I think, plus the rental income. That fourplex, we bought it for like $175K, single family. The seller was, well, maybe you could say he was in distress. I think he was going through a divorce and he was also on the verge of foreclosure.
Yeah.
You know, he just needed to unload it. And so we got it for about $175. And then I think our average rent on that was probably close to $3,000 a month. Yeah, total for all 4 units. Mind you, we were planning to live in one of them. And that's where the military threw a wrench at. at me. So we were in one of the units, and the military said, we're giving you an assignment. It's time for you to move across the country to Florida.
All the way across the country. About as far as you can go.
And so we were like, well, we were young, new, learning, all that stuff. Okay, so yeah, she did have some family in town. So we had that for emergency purposes. We tried a little bit of managing it ourselves, but we didn't have the experience or the mindset. So we turned it over to property management, which was good for us because they took care of all the headache associated. And yeah, we paid them a little bit for that. But there was one tenant in particular that he had all kinds of sob stories under the sun. And it was good that we turned it over because they ended up getting him evicted pretty quickly.
No matter how many units you have.
Absolutely. Whether you do it in-house or whether you pay somebody else. So for us, we weren't at that level to do it in-house. So we ended up bringing someone in, paying for them to do it. Deals in Great Falls, Montana.
Nice.
Then we moved to Pensacola and we bought there, but did not buy any investments there, which kind of kicked myself. But, it was shortly after that when we moved away from Pensacola, Florida, and we moved to England, I started thinking about our future a lot more in depth and changing my mindset. And it's actually around that time I was connected in with the kingdom, which I think we'll chat about here in just a minute. But when I moved to England, I started thinking about, we'll say like 8 years into my military journey, maybe 10, somewhere around there. And I was like, if I want to really enjoy retirement, because I have young kids at that time and I want to spend time, I need to do something and I need to be serious about it. And that's when I started turning to learning more online, searching videos, Facebook groups, all that stuff. And that's how I connected in with the kingdom. That's a little bit of a background on first deals and a little bit of my journey.
Nice. That's awesome. On the first deal side, when you guys decided to buy your first one, like how long of a process was that when you were like, let's do it to the time that you acquired it?
The very first one in Montana was surprisingly faster than what I expected on an REO one. I want to say 2 months from start to finish, but I guess we got lucky with the bank wanting to unload it pretty quickly.
Sure.
Which always the case.
Yeah, especially in the REO situation.
But thinking back timeline, we were talking about 07, 08.
Right.
Perhaps bank might have known something that others didn't.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. We're not careful. We could be here for a long time on that one.
From my perspective in Great Falls, Montana, every market's different. I would say Montana's market was, flat with a slight, whereas, the nationwide market was certainly a more sharp increase. Yes. So when that bubble burst for the country, it didn't really affect us that much in Great Falls, Montana.
Yeah, and Montana has a history of that, like as a state. Like it doesn't do this. It's like little blips. So you got the first one, only took a couple months. From the time you went from the first one to the fourplex, because that was next, right? Mm-hmm. How long was that?
So we lived in the first one. I don't think we were there for a full year. So we'll say it was probably about 10 years we were in there. And then for a VA loan, you go through the standard. We chose to have a home inspection, obviously, and then appraisal and all that stuff. So I would say that was probably close to a 2-month process as well for that whole thing. It might have been 3. It was a long time ago, but I think it was closer to 2.
Yeah. Awesome. And then when you came into the kingdom, like what motivated you to find or to pick the kingdom specifically?
That's a great question. I mean, there's so many reasons. The kingdom is amazing. The people are phenomenal. So what led me to the kingdom, right? Mindset, that passion, that drive for financial freedom, to learn something more. That was a big thing was, there's all these guys out here that are selling something, but not really bringing value to the table. And it was kingdom, we were there for fellowship, for helping each other. It was a family journey,
Yeah.
And it's grown to be, it's amazing. I can't even describe it. But I was one of the first 50 to join. And that was pretty awesome. I mean, I was just in the right place at the right time.
And the cool thing is that there's actually a lot of first 50 people still around.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is cool. So you joined the kingdom. I mean, it sounds like you were kind of looking for that community, that fellowship, and that's really what brought you in. Is you're like, okay, this is what I need. At that point, did you consider yourself like an investor at that point? Were you like, yeah, I've got some units. This is the route that I'm going to go down long term?
I will say that's a yes and no answer. And so, yes, in some ways, deep down, I felt, yes, I'm an investor. I'm starting to invest. But then I think another part of it was the confidence thing of, am I Brian that's in the military and happens to invest on the side? Or am I Brian, I invest in real estate and I happen happened to be in the military as a way to help me, then over time through multiple trainings, connections, conversations, that development piece helped me grow and learn that mindset shift. I needed to shift away from, I'm not this military guy. I'm Brian, the investor that's built my company to where I plan on having it go. A means of helping me do that is I'm in the military vehicle.
So that's a perfect segue into my next question. And that was, where are you at now with your business?
So where we're at now. So, I told you I really started shifting my mindset when we moved to England. Let me back up a little bit. We ended up selling those 2 properties in Montana when I was in England. And so we used the cash because we had built up equity to turn around and start buying properties in Ohio, mainly Southwest Ohio. And real estate was like dirt cheap too at the time.
In that part of the country.
But I mean, for example, I think I bought property for $15,000 that needed some work. I probably needed like 40 grand in rehab, but that was like a full on rehab for like 40 grand back then. I still own that property to today. Sorry, I feel like I went on a tangent there. What was the question?
Oh, I was just asking, where's your business at now? And then you were talking being in England, you sold the properties, and then you got into the Cincinnati properties.
Yes. So I got a couple in Cincinnati, and then I decided to focus more in the Dayton area. But where we're at now, we've grown over the years to, we're on pace to pass 100 units this year.
That's awesome.
So that's a goal of ours. But more importantly, we're trying to push towards that passive income of 6-figure net income is what we're going for this year. That's the goal. See how close.
Yeah, so basically you have upper middle class income coming in passive over 6 figures a year passively. That's huge.
Right. I think it was last year, and I started realizing that my income from my real estate has surpassed or equaled my military income, and it's just going to continue to being in the military for me actually it was good for the first little bit, but now it's actually prohibiting my potential, my growth. And so that's where I'm at right now. And Jordan told me this a long time ago. He said what was going to happen. He said, you could be a lot further. He's right. I think the security aspect really prevented my potential, but realizing where I'm at and what I can really get to, I'm probably going to retire next year at 20 because I am coming up on 19 years. So I'm get to 20, retire.
And that full retirement for the military. Yep.
And focus on this full time. That'll give me more time with my family too.
With what you were saying to Jordan's point, yeah, you could have grown faster. However, you've still taken what's in front of you and made the best of it.
Yes.
Every year. And you've just compounded that every year. And now when you retire, you're still young. Like looking at you, you look like you found the fountain of youth. Like you're talking about like, oh yeah, I bought a property in 2007. I'm like, what were you, like 8? Like, come on, found the fountain of youth. Come on now. I've got so much gray. I'm just like, I'm jealous.
I came into high school, so I retire. My goal is to retire the military before I'm 40 years old, which between 38 and 40, we'll see.
See? So before you're 40, you'll have put in 20 years of service in the military, retire with a full retirement, and you'll have over 100 doors netting. Key here, folks, net. And when we're talking net, because I know what he means by net based on how it's taught in the kingdom, it is a true net, not gross, very much net. So he's taking home 6 figures a year, every year, before you're 40.
And that was kind of the, going back to the beginning, going back to when I really shifted my mind in England. I was like, look, I've got to do something. I could sit there and analysis paralysis. I could watch a million videos, talk to people, but at the end of the day, taking all that in, I had to take that first step. And taking that action, I learned the most through taking action. Definitely ups and downs, but at the day, sticking through, continuing forward. I mean, it's grown to where it's at now, and it's only going to keep going.
That's awesome, dude. I'm so proud of you. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. You have accomplished what everyone who comes into our community dreams of. It wasn't easy. I think you would probably agree. Was it easy?
No.
I would imagine. But you still always are looking at, how do I make the most of what's in front of me? And that's just been a trend for you as long as I've known you. Like, you've just always, regardless of how engaged we've been together in community, like we were talking, it's been a minute since we've caught up. I see you, and I know your heart, and I know your character, and like, I just know how you're operating, and I'm like, that's a dude that just always makes the most of what's in front of him, and now you're reaping the rewards of that.
I think some of the lessons I learned through the process was going back to really taking an in-depth look at yourself. How much time are you devoting towards some things that aren't bringing you value or growth? Finding ways to eliminate those or weed those out and focus on things that do bring you value along the way, and factor in that too.
Yeah, that self-awareness, and then also the awareness of like what you're spending your time and your energy and your mental capacity on.
Absolutely.
Would you say that that's when you've talked about like the mental shift, was that kind of the process you went through when you were in England? Was like developing that awareness and seeing seeing like, this is where I'm spending my time, my money, my energy, etc. But this is not productive. I need to shift it.
Absolutely. I mean, giving a couple small examples, just thinking through how often some people might think, how often do I go out to eat, or do I go out party? Do I go to a sporting event? Now, I'm not saying that I don't treat myself. You've got to treat yourself.
Of course, yes.
But you also have to instill that discipline. So I guess, how often do I watch movies or shows? You can go down the YouTube. You can
rabbit hole.
Yeah. How much time do you go towards that? That's not bringing you in, whether you're using time blocking or whatever you got to do, prioritize your time.
I think you've touched on a big one of, when you mentioned like YouTube, and then you mentioned analysis paralysis earlier, and you also mentioned learning by taking action. Like, all of those are cohesive together, because so many people, myself included, I've been in this trap before. Sounds like you've been in this trap before, where like you go down that YouTube rabbit hole, or you go down that education rabbit hole of like, you just need to learn the next thing. And then we think that we're learning. That learning is action.
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh, we're taking action, we're building a business, but in reality, we're just bringing in too much information because there's no action with it.
I think in the early stages, I kind of dabbled with a couple different things. We did a little bit of private lending, some flips, we did some rentals. I would say, and I learned this early on. I mean, this is something that we teach about in the kingdom, especially Jordan preaches about this. Don't stretch yourself too thin. Focus on one thing and master it.
Yes.
And then when you've mastered it, learn and grow from there. For me, that was more rentals, more like the Burr method. So for me, that's kind of what I focus on.
So here's the question. You're approaching 100 units.
Yeah.
Do you consider that you have mastered it yet?
Sometimes I think there are some aspects that I have, but every day I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And being open-minded, seeing, yes, there are some aspects that I have learned through experience that I've mastered. And then there are many other things that I have not mastered. Always room for efficiency. But you can't beat yourself up when you make mistakes. You just got to learn from it and move on, right? I think a big part of me that I need to worry about now is, at what point do I feel comfortable to segue into bringing something else in, starting to pivot towards something else. Kind of toying with that idea now, thinking about is, I keep having this huge issue with property management, and through a need, I feel like it's calling me to build my own property management company and hire in-house to have more control. That for me, by the end of the year, is to start another company for that and solve those problems.
Big venture.
I'm still in the early stages, but
one of the cool things, I mean, you've already mentioned a lot of things that are cool about the highlights about the kingdom. But one of the things when you were talking about the community, like, I'm already out. As you're talking about that, I'm like, oh, I already know like 2 or 3 people that will be great for Bryan to talk to if he does go the property management route. Like, is that not like one of the coolest things where we're like, we need to talk to Elissa? Okay, cool. We need to talk to Ronnie. Okay, cool. Like, let's go talk to those people if that's the route you're going to go down. Contacts, and we know that they're going to be like, yeah, I'll help you out. I can show you how to do that.
Exactly. I mean, we're a family, and helping each other. That's just what we're here for, through that connection and that like-mindedness. There are going to be people are a little bit more of an expert at that I can learn from. At times there are things that I'm more of an expert at and I'm able to give value. That's what I love about the kingdom. It's not just take. It's give and take. It goes both ways.
My last question for you would be, what advice would you give someone who's on the fence about joining the kingdom and investing in themselves?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind, just do it. Just take action. Just jump in. Learn on the fly. You're not going to be an expert. You're not going to master everything in one day. Saying Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
Well, the state empire wasn't built in a day either. Or business. It's not all real estate. I think that's kind of what comes to my mind when we talk about someone that's on the fence about joining the kingdom. I mean, what do you have to lose?
Right, exactly.
When you compare what you have to lose versus what you could possibly gain, really a question.
We could have just done that. Mic drop right there. Seriously though, Bryan, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for doing this. This is going to impact some people. So I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for being a man of character. Thank you for being consistent for your family. Your light gets to shine and impact other people.
I appreciate that.
Likewise, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.